Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining me again. Today, we're going to talk about making PowerPoint presentations and Microsoft Word accessible. So I'm going to give you a heads up. I really want you to focus on the screen, not necessarily me. So I am going to turn my camera off just because you really don't need to see me. You need to see the screen. Also, in the chat is my colleague, Doug, and he will be presenting with me. But during my presentation part, he will be answering all of your questions in the chat. So just make sure that you put those there and he'll be there to help you. All right. So I believe
Just
there's
so you know, there's other links for this that are working that put people in random other rooms with random other people.
what is it?
So John Saeed and I just had our own meeting by clicking on a link to what we thought was this, and it just put the three of us in a room by ourselves.
Oh, wow. I'm not sure why. CJ, is there any way you could help me kind of troubleshoot that one?
It looks like everybody is here on my end. We've got close to 50 participants, and I'm pretty sure we're all here in the same room now. So it may have been something quick, but I think whatever it is has been remedied. I think everyone is here.
Okay, great. Thank you. You know, Zoom technology throws a wrench in everything sometimes, doesn't it? So for everyone here, you know, I'm not sure if everyone's been here, so you're going to hear a very quick spiel about who we are as a center, just in case you haven't been to my other presentations. And also, it's just good practice for me to always make sure I do this. So we are part of West Virginia University and the Center for, or the Health Science Center. We're also part of a larger network called AUCD. I really strongly encourage you get on there. You learn more about it. There's a ton of resources. There's a lot of webinars. They're always putting a lot of wonderful information out there, and they're also putting a lot of policy-driven information out there. We serve the whole state of West Virginia. The counties you see in blue are where we're housed. Our main offices are in Mon County, in Morgantown, and in Kanawha, in Big Chimney. We have 13 programs, 3 clinics, and we have staff stationed everywhere who, like I said, they're in the counties in blue, typically in DHHR offices, and they serve the counties in white surrounding them. And here's some of the roles that we have at the center as well. So now that I'm through that, you guys have heard me say that all week. I know a lot of you have been on my presentations. I'm going to talk to you about Microsoft Word or Microsoft PowerPoint first. So to give you a little background, you know, as an educational institution, you guys are the same as we are. You want to make sure that everything that you're putting out there is as accessible as possible. So you're keeping in mind people with blindness, color blindness, visual impairment, hearing deficits, speech impairment, as well as physical disabilities such as mobility, strength, and other forms. So just being conscious of the things that you're doing. Now, a lot of the things that we're going to talk to you today about are things that you really just need to put the effort into. But there are some things in this presentation that are bound by law, and we'll go over those as well. So what makes a presentation accessible? Well, pretty much ensuring that all your participants, regardless of their abilities, their learning abilities, their hearing, vision, all of those things, that they can fully participate. So that means that you have to be mindful of their abilities, and you also have to be mindful of the way that you're presenting your information. So make sure that you're presenting it in a way that if someone cannot see well, hear well, or even learn in a different way, that they can still hear your message. That's really the most important thing you're doing, because anytime you're presenting, you have a message you're delivering, and you want to make sure that message reaches more people. So it increases more access to individuals to hear that message. So if you're putting things on visually on a screen, like a graph or a chart, then people with good vision or vision abilities, they have no problem taking in that information necessarily. They don't have one. But if someone doesn't have vision, then they're not going to get that information. So you're going to have to give an alternative to that in a way that they can still get that message, whatever it was that you're portraying with that image. So it also makes it more accessible for individuals who are not fluent in English. So being able to have things in ways that can be easily transferable to different languages, ran through translators, or even making sure that your information is being presented in ways that adhere to different learning styles. You guys are all educators, so you probably are more familiar with this than most people that we train. but just making sure that you're being very mindful in even testing of skills, like not just testing a skill from a multiple choice perspective, but also is there a hands-on way to test it? Or is there an open-ended way to test it as well? So you really can test the person's skill and you're not necessarily testing their testing abilities. So there's a couple of things that I kind of call the surface level parts of making a presentation or a PowerPoint accessible. And these are the things that I think most people know exist. And that's font size, font type, and color contrast. So font size really matters. So I want to ask you guys, and you can kind of put it in the chat, what do you think the minimum on this screen you should be using for size should be? Let me see if I can see the chat. So we get 28, 28, 44, 28, 36, lots of 28s, an 18. Okay, 12, 18. We'll allow 6 to 8 lines of text. Oh, I have never heard that measurement, but I like that. I can see where that would fit. Okay. All right. So general consensus, I'm seeing, let's see, Doug, what are you saying? What do you think general consensus is here?
I think 28 has the most.
28 has the most votes. Well, whoever voted 28 is correct. So for PowerPoint presentations, really to make it visually accessible, you want to make sure that you're having it at 28 or larger. Now, you can see on my screen that there is some text on here that's a little smaller, and those are things that are embedded in my PowerPoint presentation. And those are kind of our logos. So the WVU, West Virginia University, and the Center for Excellence in Disabilities, that's kind of our logos. That's not really content for the presentation. So if it's content for the presentation, you want to make sure that it's large enough. All right. So font style. So fonts, I'm a child of the 90s. I grew up really predominantly in the 90s. And you know, we started getting Microsoft Word and making fonts fun and that Comic Sans and all that good stuff. But, you know, that's all good and it's really fun. But however, it's not accessible. For instance, let's look at the second bullet. You know, while this looks really great, it can really be difficult to read. So let's say that you have a visual impairment, or let's say that you have maybe even like dyslexia or something like that. Some of these like lowercase L's, that kind of looks like a lowercase b. So these little swirly things can kind of distort letters for some people who may already have difficulty recognizing or reading the letters. So you want to make sure that you're keeping it very simple. It's not making it very hard to read, but making it very easy on the eyes. So I like to stay with some of these very simple ones. I typically choose Arial and just keep it very, very clean. Now, color contrast. So color contrast is probably the one that I see people make one of the most mistakes with, because they don't make it pop. Color contrast is extremely important because that's how you make your message stand out on the screen. So having a high contrast not only helps those with vision challenges, but it also helps get attention. That's what that second bullet says. Hold on. Can you see me? I literally am about 7 inches from my screen, and I have to get that close to be able to see that. So imagine if this is projected and someone's across the room. How are they going to be able to see that? How are they going to be able to do that? And it's very difficult. So you want to make sure you have a really good contrast. If you have a dark background like I'm using right now, I want to use a bright color. So I want to use white, or I want to use yellow. I typically stay in my color scheme, and I always use the university PowerPoint. So I always do those. If I have a yellow background, I'm going to do the black text or navy text. White, I'm going to have that. So just making sure you have that. Now, making sure also that you can be creative. However, you want to make sure that you're doing it in a way that is also visually appealing. And so what I mean by that is sometimes I'll see people having That West Virginia background is not doing anyone any favors. Not very well, no. And this is a slide that I do try to make sure that I use this as like a title slide. I try to make sure that I'm using a more subtle background for some of the other ones if possible. I wanted to show you could see how it definitely can blur in. You can see with the yellow, it definitely will stand out a little bit. So if you are using a background or a template that does have a little bit of a thing in the back, making sure that you're making it pop extra. Also, I see a lot of times people will put an image in the background and then they'll put like the text over it. And that's really hard to get color contrast with that, because think of all the different colors in one image. So it would be hard to get, it would be almost impossible to get good color contrast without it overlapping somewhere with a color that's very similar to it. So just keeping it simple is what's best. For some reason, my slides are not changing. Okay. So normally we have people stop and do this a couple times, but you guys have been in training all day. And we also know that you guys are doing it in different ways. So what I want you guys to do is take note of a couple things, and then you can send these presentations to me and I will give you one-on-one feedback. So I will actually give you feedback on a presentation that you make accessible. So we ask that you send a presentation. It can be one that you want to make or whatever you want to make it on if you just want to practice, or it can be a presentation that you already have that you want to make accessible. And make sure that everything that we've covered so far, such as font style, font size, and color contrast, are covered in it. And once again, this is just a way for you guys to get kind of one-on-one personalized feedback from me. And I do ask, there are 52 people in here, so I'm going to be getting a lot of these. So do give me a little bit of time to get that feedback back to you. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about, actually the next couple things we're going to talk about, are moving beyond those like surface level things. So these are things that people don't always know exist, and that they are things that you have to do and manipulate in order to make it accessible for a screen reader. So a screen reader is going to be used for someone with a vision impairment that's going to be able to read to them what's happening on the screen and allow them to navigate it. So you would send their presentations before or after, and they would use these functions. Then they would not be using them during the time of your presentation. But without these features, those presentations would not be able to get all the information. And as we go through, you'll see some examples of how that happens. But alt text is the very first one. So what alt text is also called alt tag. It's an attribute attached to an image that describes the nature or the contents of that image. It's used as a clear text alternative for screen readers to read to the person a description of what the other individuals are visually seeing. And once again, you have to take steps in order to get to this and make it accessible. So what I'm going to show you is, I find that a lot of people don't, and I for a long time had no idea what the flip side of a screen reader would be like. So what does the person experience when they're using a screen reader? And I think it's important that you see that, so you have insight into how you can make it a better experience and how you can ensure that they're getting equal access to your message as individuals who are visually taking it in. So what this video is it is a video of 2 different screen reading programs, and Doug is our assistive technology specialist, one of our assistive technology specialists at the center, so he can tell you a lot more about these programs than I ever could. But if I'm not mistaken, one of them is a Windows one and one is a Mac. And it's going to read to you. You're going to see both examples. You're going to hear the voice. I always like to take note of the voice. And you're going to see what it's like if you do not do anything except upload an image into your PowerPoint, what that person will experience. And then you're going to see another one of what it would be like if someone goes in and puts alt text in. So I want you to take note of the difference. And I also want you to take note of how they're describing the image whenever they put the alt text in. And you're going to get 2 examples.
Heading level 2. Image with no alt attribute. You are currently on a heading level 2. Slash example 1, 2, 3, JPG image. You are currently on an image. Heading level 2, image with alt text.
I don't know why it paused.
You are currently on a heading level 2. A small dog running across a grassy field, mouth open, ready to catch a tennis ball image. You are currently on an image.
Image with no alt attribute. Heading 2. Example 123 image. Image with alt text. Heading 2. A small dog running across a grassy field, mouth open, ready to catch a tennis ball.
So let me pull up the chat. I'm curious, what you saw the difference between if someone did not put in alt text and if they entered an alt text description. What are some of the things you noticed about the description? So it reads the name of the image, okay. Defaults to read image name, provided color, okay. Descriptive about what it is. Yeah. So if you do nothing for alt text, what it's going to default to is whatever you have saved that image on your computer as. So the file name. Now, let's say you go and you copy an image off of Google and you don't save it on there. Whatever that image is uploaded as is what it's going to be. So it's typically something that's meaningless. So you have to go in and you have to put a description in. The things I want to note about this description, and I'm going to talk to about these a little bit more, but you know, it said a dog with its mouth open, catching a tennis ball, running in a field. It didn't say anything about a happy dog or an excited dog, because that's assuming emotion. So you're never going to assume anything. You're never going to infer emotion about anything. So you just explicitly say what you see, because that dog may be terrified of that tennis ball. It may be excited. We don't know. So a tennis ball flying through the air, a small dog in a field with its mouth open. You just describe explicitly what you see. Now, if the presentation's about types of dogs or breeds of dogs, then you would maybe put the type of dog it is. So you would maybe say a terrier. I don't know what, I think it's a rat terrier, or maybe a Jack Russell, but a terrier in a field with its mouth open, a tennis ball flying in the air. So you would just put that information. But if the presentation is about behavior reinforcement and teaching dogs tricks, then the breed of the dog isn't relevant, so you wouldn't include it. And another thing I want to note is you heard the voices of them. They're really robotic, not really that great of voices to listen to. And that's something I think is important, because there's things that we do in the presentation that will make the screen reader be very repetitive. And what I mean by that is that the screen reader reads every single keystroke that you make. So if you start making space bars or tabs or anything like that, it's going to read that, and it gets very redundant over time. All right. So alt text is required for everything that you input into a presentation. So any kind of image type thing that you embed, you're going to have to alt text it. And we already talked about this. It's a non-visual way of representing your content or your function or the message of the image that you're displaying. So pictures, illustrations, images of text, shapes, memes, charts, graphs, all of those things must be alt texted. Now, I will tell you that the newer versions of Mac processing and the newer versions of Windows have been doing some automatic alt texting. And what I mean by that is that the computer auto generates something that they think may be the alt text. And Doug, I don't know about you, but if I see 10 of those, maybe 2 of them are quality enough, maybe one.
Yeah, the photo has to be really basic
Yeah.
for them to be accurate.
So, I mean, so you need to make sure, even if your computer's automatically doing this, you go back in and you check it. Because like you said, it has to be very basic. I have seen multiple and they're just not working. I see someone in the chat said that their new textbook resources are already done. Yeah, so I think more companies are getting up onto this, especially with everything moving virtual naturally in our society. I know our university they're really pushing to have all of your stuff accessible and all of that by spring. So a lot of things are already getting on board, which is great because then that keeps us from having to do extra work, I think. So you want to make sure that you are putting all of those in. Now, I am not sure what kind of things you guys are using, whether you use Mac or Windows. So we do have the instructions for both. All of our examples are going to be in Windows because that's predominantly what we use. But good news for Mac is that Mac's pretty simplistic and straight to the point. And once you understand how to write an alt text, it's just a matter of finding the place to put it in on your program. So for Windows, and we will make sure we have a pared down version of this presentation that we will make sure whenever I stop presenting and Doug picks up, I will actually drop it into the chat. I'll attach it. And then I'll make sure also that CJ has a copy of it as well. So you will have all these steps. But for Windows users, to get to alt text, you're going to right click the image. You're going to see probably a couple of these options. So for everyone's going to see format picture at the very bottom when they right click that and that menu comes up. Some people are going to see size and properties and alt text already there. It depends on what version of Microsoft you're running. So let's say you don't have any of those. You just have format picture. So you're going to click that. There will be a little square box, and I'm going to show you these steps in a second, that's labeled size and properties. When you hover over it, click that, and alt text will be in a drop down there. And then you're going to enter the alt text description. For Mac users, it's the little less steps there. You just right click your image and go to edit alt text and you enter the description. So let me show you some of these steps. So we're going to look at this top right image over here. So whenever you right click the image, you're going to see a drop down come down. My version, I see size and properties and format picture. I could technically click size and properties and it will take me straight to that and it will be available. But let's say I don't see that. All I have to do is right click the format picture, hover, I'll click the square box with the measurements, and then I'll enter the alt text. Now, one thing that you can see here about alt text is that there is a title box and a description box. I only use the title box when it makes sense. Now, graphs, charts, things like that, it makes sense to use that. But whenever it comes to just a basic image description, I think that it just makes sense to just put it there, because I find that if I try to give it a title, I end up being redundant in what I'm saying. I end up saying basically the same thing in the description. So why not just put it in the description? However, for graphs and charts, I think it's very crucial to give it a title, because that helps organize the information for that person. So when you're describing the image, you want to make sure that you give whatever is relevant to what you're visually showing. So if I'm showing you a trend in data, then I want to make sure that I'm describing that trend and data within that alt text. Now, I also, remember I said before that no one's going to be using their screen reader while you're presenting or while you're teaching. So while you're teaching and you're going over that slide with that graph on it, you're going to want to make sure that you read out loud, that you verbally describe whatever you're trying to see as well, because people are going to be able to see that, and you don't want that person to be left behind. And sometimes I like giving my information before, that way they have a time to review it and read it or listen to it, and then make sure that if they have questions whenever they are in my session, that they have the equal access to ask those, that they're not behind. Also, you want to make sure that you keep the description concise. Now, it can get a little bit more wordier whenever you're talking about images and graphs, But for basic things like that, you want to make sure you just keep it very concise and straight to the point. Don't describe every detail unless it's vital to your message. So like with the dog picture, is it important that everyone knows what breed dog that is? Or is it more important the fact that they are giving a description of what was happening with the tennis ball being thrown? So we're going to look at some examples here. Well, I like to show bad examples first. So I put together kind of a PowerPoint that is not ideal. But let's talk about this PowerPoint. So what, off the top of your head, what are you seeing first before I even go into alt text about this? Do you think that it's accessible from just what you're visually seeing? You can answer in the chat. No. So what's not accessible about this? Hard to see. Okay. Text color, too much black. Okay. So not good color contrast. Yeah. There's one other thing. Now watch, if I change this to white, look what a difference that makes, right? Look at a huge difference that makes. There's one other way that this isn't accessible, and it's this text right here. That's only 20. Let me just increase. Look what a difference that makes. So just increasing the color, or changing the color and making it pop, and also just making it larger, it makes a huge difference. So this slide, same thing's wrong here. We need to change this font color, but let's take a look at what is this alt texted. So I'm going to go down to format picture, and this is going to pop up. I'm going to click size and properties. Here's my alt text. So I said Batman. Well, then I said Batman. Batman stands with pride as he looks to the sky at his bat signal. He is hands down the coolest of the superheroes, especially Superman. Do you think that's a good alt text? No. Why is it not a good alt text? You've added too much detail that isn't in the photo, irrelevant, too much opinion. Yeah, so looking down through this, this word by word, Batman stands with pride. We have no idea if he's prideful. Batman could be terrified right now. He could be, I mean, he just might be scared. Who knows? We have no idea what he's looking at. He's just looking up. And he's hands down the coolest of the superheroes. Well, that may be true in some people's opinions, me being one of them. It's not factual and it's not relevant to the message. So how would you fix this? Well, the way I would fix it would be Batman looks up at the sky, or Batman in his bat suit looks up at the sky. And then I would probably, and this is a very important point that I learned by mistake. When I was doing this training, that we were doing it for the very first time, Jesse Wright and I with WVATS, we did it, and one of our colleagues was in the room who uses a screen reader, and she was listening to some of the descriptions, and she pointed out to us that she had no idea what Batman looked like. No one had ever described Batman to her. And that's important, because if I'm saying that Batman in his bat suit's different from Batman and not in a suit, and his suit is a very essential part of him, just like with Superman's, or just like your university's logo or your mascot is a very important part of your identity. So what you would want to do is maybe the very first image that you have with him in his suit, you would describe it. So Batman stands in his suit, which is made out of black rubber or black, whatever you want to say. I think this one was made out of rubber. It has a yellow tool belt and a yellow and black emblem with a bat symbol on it. You could describe his mask. Now, I'm saying color. And this is very important for me to point out, because there are some images that I'm going to show you that does have color. and I would not necessarily include the color in the description. When would you include color in description? Because color is a visual reference most of the time. So I would include color when color has a purpose for the identity. So for instance, Batman's colors are black and gold. Or black and yellow. That's an important part of the identity. If he wore different colors, then maybe it wouldn't be that important. If I am alt texting the flying WV, then I'm going to include it. I'm going to say the gold and blue because that's part of West Virginia University's identity. Same with your school. Now, if I'm showing and I'm going to show you one here in a little bit, if I'm just showing a pie chart that has the different sections in colors, then I'm probably not going to include the color of those sections because that's just creating a visual representation. It doesn't have meaning behind it. When describing a flag, absolutely. When you're talking about the United States flag, it's red, white, and blue, right? That's important. It's part of the identity. So let's look at just a couple other bad images. And I'm going to tell you, there's alt text for these. And they're kind of funny. I had fun with this one day. But this image right here on the left, this image is a joke image, kind of. And the thing here is sometimes jokes do not land well whenever you write them out. And it just doesn't. There's too many variables. So this joke is based on the fact that there is a social media outlet, I think it's called Foursquare, if I'm not mistaken, that people used to, I don't know if people use it now, but they used to like tag themselves at locations. So I would go to Starbucks and tag myself with Foursquare that I'm at the Starbucks on University Avenue. So that's what this does. And it shows everybody that you are friends with Facebook and all these other things that it's tied into where you're at. So this joke is saying that Robin tagged himself in at the Batcave, which then gave up the thing. See, there's a whole lot of description that goes into this joke, and that people they need prior knowledge of what is Foursquare, and because this is a play on it. They have to know that the Batcave is in a secret location. All of these things have to come into play. So what I'm saying to you is that images like this, they don't really transfer all over that well. Now, if they're important to your message, if they are part of your educational curriculum, then of course you're going to leave it in. But if it's something that's just in there that you've put in there to try to get attention or try to lighten the mood or whatever it is, you have to be really careful because your message may not transfer over to everybody. This image right here, this is people use memes all the time. And this portrays two examples for me. One example is that it's a joke, right? No, me. People have to know that Batman's theme song is no, Batman, right? So that's one. Two is that when you're doing a meme, like, so let's say that you have a meme that you're using that it really is portraying a message or whatever it is. It's an image with words over it. That's all a meme is. It doesn't have to be funny. It doesn't have to be witty. It's just an image with words over it. You need to make sure that you describe the image. And then what I always do is I put in quotations whatever the words are. So I would describe Batman on these steps with a microphone in his hand. And then I would put quote, with the words quote, no, me, end quote. So you want to make sure that for one, you filled these two. Is this a joke or is this have a message behind it that I want to portray? And then two, you want to make sure if you are keeping it that you put in those words and that kind of words that you have in there. Okay. So back to the good examples. Hopefully, if it'll load up. All right, so you guys, every single time you've seen me, you've seen this slide. And I told you that when you joined me for accessibility that we would talk about this slide a little bit more. When we started making our presentations fully accessible, as much as we could, of course, because, you know, you have to make your best efforts of everything. But technology does change on us sometimes. this slide in particular was one that there was some conversation around. No one knew how to alt text this at first. So, give you some information about this slide. I've talked to you about it. You know that in the counties in blue are the counties where we have staff who have offices. Either they're in one of our main offices or they're in a DHHR office. They cover the whole state though. So if someone's in Hampshire County, then they're covering Mineral, Hardy, maybe Grant. Same thing with Greenbrier, they're covering maybe Pocahontas, Monroe, maybe Sunburst, some of Webster. So it just depends on the program and all that. The message behind this image is, hey, no matter where you are in the state, we have someone either in your county or in your neighboring county that's going to provide services to you. That's the message. Now, this will be a fun little chat activity. How would you alt text this? Knowing that message. Now, keep in mind, you don't want to be redundant, and the screen reader is going to read everything on your slide, including your text in the alt text. So I've already told you in the text that we cover the whole state. So I don't need to say that in my alt text. So how would you do it? It can be very simple when it's a very simple text. It's a whole other thing when you have a lot of information in an image. You can create a bullet list of the covered and put it in as the text. List the last 4 bullets. I don't know, what do you mean by list the last 4 bullets? So you could expand on the text within the slide and put that information in there, right? Is what you're saying? You could do that, but that's going to maybe muddy up your slide. And then is there a purpose for the image at that point? I think this image portrays good information because you know what county you're in. You just have to identify where you fall, and then you can look and see. It's a nice image, you're right. I would list how it's the state of West Virginia and then list the counties where the offices are available. Aha, someone got it. Okay, so here is how I would alt text this. That's how it is alt texted. Map of the state of West Virginia, broken down by counties. The following counties are where CED staff have offices. And then every county in blue is listed in that alt text. So it'll say, these are the counties where we have offices: Ohio, Monongalia, Marion, Harrison, Randolph, Pendleton, Braxton, Rome. It lists every single one in blue. It does not list the ones in white, because we're telling you in the text around the image that we serve the whole state. And we're telling you that we're giving you the information of where we're housed. So if I'm listening to that alt text and I'm in Summers County and I'm hearing Randolph, Fayette, or Raleigh, Fayette, Nicholas, Greenbrier, I'm going to assume that my service provider is going to come from one of those counties, or I'm going to know to reach out to one of those counties. So you make sure that you put that in there. Now, you notice I didn't say the color blue in my description, but I made sure that I addressed the message that the color blue was doing. The color blue was providing a visual message to everyone looking at it right now. I made sure that that message was portrayed in that alt text description. Now, if I am alt texting this little flying WV, I'm going to make sure I say it's gold, because that's important. That's an important part of this flying WV's identity. This state's identity, this blue is serving a function. I'm addressing the function. Another way is to highlight and contrast colors with large font. Yes, you can. Now, one thing that I will say is that when you do things like color contrast, bolding, italicized, putting different colors with that color contrast, all those are visual changes. So someone using a screen reader, they're not going to have any idea. That screen reader will not tell them that that word's bolded. It will not tell them that the text on the screen is black. It will not tell them that it has a blue back, you know, it's highlighted yellow with a black text. None of that. It's going to read the words and it's going to read to them what you type in for the image. That's it. It's going to read space bars and all of that. But all of those other things are visual constraints that people with vision will benefit from. These things right here are for screen readers only. But good point. I think making visual things are wonderful because that is also a universal thing you can do, because we've all been in presentations where we're like, what does that say? And we're like, huh? Like, or I can't see that font very well, or that image is too small. So those are things that you can make changes for people that have low vision, but also people that have fine vision, just, you know, you're in a large room or whatever it is, they can benefit from as well. All right. So this image, and Doug knows a lot more about this image than I do, but you don't have to know too much all the time to describe the visual image. But this is a theoretical framework from assistive technology. So given that context, you know, you see where it comes from. I'm going to tell you how this is alt text. So you can alt text this image in a couple ways. Well, you can word it in a couple ways. You can say an inverted pyramid broken down into 4 sections, with the tallest section or the largest section on top labeled student, the next section environment, the next section task, and the smallest section at the bottom tool. Now, I said that you can say an inverted triangle. You can also say an upside down pyramid. I tell you, I point that out because keep in mind, now you guys are educators, so you're probably talking to people who are in your classes who have higher level educations. However, if you're ever public speaking to community members and things like that, be mindful of terminology and keep it simplistic, because you don't know. So an upside down triangle separated into 4 sections. Largest at the top labeled student, next section labeled environment, next labeled task, smallest at the bottom labeled tool. That's another way, that's the other alternative. So I don't say anything about the color because the color is just creating a visual breakup of the sections for me. What's important is that the students at the top, it's the largest one, and the descending level from that. So my idea is that I'm going to provide enough words that someone can create this image in their head just by listening to the words I'm providing them, or something very close. And everyone, like, I jokingly tell people all this all the time. I don't know a single profession that doesn't use triangles. Everyone uses them in some form or another in education and portraying information. So knowing how to describe things like triangles, Venn diagrams, and things like that are important. All right, so this image, I think this image is fun. This image is one where it kind of supports the message of the screen, and like, oh, we're surprised that schools and workplaces aren't that familiar with AT. But I show this image because it's one of those images where it would be nice, it would be easy to assume a lot of things. So remember before I said you can't assume things. More words do matter, yes. Language does always matter. I give leeway to that because there are people who equate a pyramid to a triangle. That's just the lay conversation they use. When you start to get into educational settings, like it's like courses, classes, you want to be as distinct as possible and descriptive as possible. But I try to keep in mind that not everyone has that reference. And if you are public speaking to communities and you don't know their education level, you're going to have to give them words that they can relate to. So that's why I say that. So it does have sound effects. Yes. This image would be very easy to say a shocked or a scared cat, but you would just explicitly say what you see. So a striped cat with its eyes wide, its mouth open, one ear visible and one ear not. It would be easy to assume this cat is missing an ear, but we don't know that. It could be laying down. So you just explicitly put it in there. This is also a slide that I show because maybe alt texting this and having this image in here, it may be distracting to your message. It may distract the person from your presentation. So this is a way that you kind of have to have a conversation with yourself to say, hey, like, I know this is a fun image to have in here, but is it really adding to the value of my presentation? And is, especially being that I have to alt text it, is that going to add to it? So in the presentation that you guys send me, I do ask that you put alt text on all your images. I will check them. I will give you feedback and let you know. Now, I will tell you that you have to really understand the message of the image sometimes to do the alt text. And that's where, like, people will ask me, like, if I send you something, can you alt text it? And I'm like, well, maybe, but maybe not, because I may not be a specialist of your content. So I may not understand your message enough to alt text it. But what I will do is I will check it. And if you put alt text in there, I'll say, yeah, this would make sense, or this would be a good one for this image. I can visually start to or put this in my brain and all of this. So I will give you feedback on those. But I always encourage people to take this opportunity as a way to really take on some of the more difficult things, because that way you get immediate feedback on those versus some images that are a little more simple, like the cat image or anything like that, but really starting to deep into images with a lot of content. So some best practices: make sure it's accurate and equivalent. Present the same content or function as the image. We've talked about this multiple times. Also, make sure that there's no more than a few words are necessary unless you're getting into those complex things, such as that image of West Virginia with the counties broken down. You know, I want to make sure I list every single county that was in blue. So that's going to be more than a couple words. And also, do not be redundant, like I said before, by repeating content in the slides. So I already said we covered the state of West Virginia, so there's no point in me listing the white counties. The function of the image was the counties in blue. So the next thing that you have to go in and kind of check or change at times is reading order. So reading order is the order in which the items on the screen are read through the screen reader. If it's incorrect, then the screen reader may read it in a jumbled way and it's going to cause confusion. So let's look at a few of these. So this image in particular has a couple components to it. This part of a national network is one component. This logo right here is an image that has alt text. And this logo right here is an image that has alt text. So when you create a slide, Microsoft PowerPoint is going to default into the order in which you create the slide as the reading order. So if I have a blank slide here and I go to create this and I insert this big map of the United States first, and then I insert part of a national network, and then I insert this logo, that's the order in which it's going to default to read to. Now that would be confusing. I wanted to read part of a national network, the alt text for AUCD, and then the alt text for this. So I have to go in and change that. So how do you do it? It's pretty simple to change. I think it's simple to change slide by slide. I have a harder time, and I just think that it's you have more errors when you wait till the very end to do this. And Doug, I don't know what you think about this, but if I'm creating a PowerPoint, which I create new PowerPoints all the time, if I'm creating a slide and I know that I did not put it in the order that I wanted it in when I created it, I go right to this and I change it. Now, I want to show you a way where you can check for everything at the end, but these are things that I try to keep up with as I'm doing it so I don't mess up and I don't miss it. So what you do for Windows is you go to the Home tab and you're going to see Drawing Tools. You're going to select a range from the Drawing tool. In that drop-down menu, you're going to select Selection Pane. The items that on that, there's going to be a little window that will pop up on your right. The items are listed, and this is incredibly important for Windows users to remember. The screen reader will read it from the bottom up. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that, but it's going to read the item on the bottom and then move its way up. So what I mean by that is when you go to this, you're going to click Home, Arrange, Selection Pane. These are going to correspond with the parts of the slide. When you click them, it's going to highlight on the slide what you're clicking. So it lets you know what this is. So from this image, whatever this text box 10 is, which is probably this part of a national network, it's going to read it first. And then it's going to read content placeholder, which I'm going to tell you what that, I'm going to talk about that for a second. That was left in there on purpose to show you something. And then it's going to read alt text. If you want to change this, all you have to do is click and hold on to it and drag it down. But the most important thing to remember is that it's going to read from the bottom up. Here is the reading order for how to get to it for Mac users. It's a little more, I still think Mac is more straightforward with some things, even though I'm not a Mac user, but it's not as confusing because when you go through these steps, it's going to pop the things up in kind of window panes that will go from left to right on your screen. And those are, it's going to read it from left to right. So you're able to drag those window panes around. You don't have to worry about remembering bottom to up. It's just a natural thing. So you want to make sure that whatever you send me your PowerPoint that you check those things. And I want to show you on this slide in particular something. So I am going to go to Arrange and Selection Pane. Now, I purposely made sure the reading order on this was wrong so I could show you this. And I also made sure something else was in here. So as you click through these, it's going to show you what you're looking at. Put it in order. I think that's the order I want it in. See it moving? Okay. See this thing right here? This content placeholder, for when we first started doing this, we now have this locked into our PowerPoint presentation into the background like this West Virginia University is, because until we did that, this was on every single slide. So a screen reader would read this every single slide. And you heard the voice that the screen readers have. It's not very nurturing. It's not very comforting. You could easily lose a message when you have redundant information in there that the person's listening to. So we had to make sure we got that locked down. We figured it out because of this, because we saw it popping up in here like, oh, whoa, screen readers flagging that. So we need to make sure that's locked down. So some of those things you'll be able to find in here. There's also times that you'll get a PowerPoint background that'll have like a line going across it or like a blue circle up here. And you'll think like, oh, that's just part of the background. It's not. A lot of times it's a floating image and people will forget to alt text those. And in fact, it doesn't make sense to alt text those background type things that are in there because they're not serving anything more than a visual function. So I tell people, I delete them, but if you have to leave them in there, make sure you delete them and save it as an accessible version. So when you send that version out, all those like little lines or little background visual things that's going on to make your presentation pretty, you're sending it out that doesn't have those, so that screen reader is not bogged down by those types of things. Okay. So that's a good way to that's one area you can kind of check yourself in. Right. So just make sure that you've checked those things. So far, the things that I'm asking that you guys make sure in your presentation, your PowerPoints, is your font size is 28 or larger. You have good color contrast. You have made sure that you use a simple font. You've alt texted your images, and you've also checked your reading order to make sure it makes sense. So you're now at the end of finishing your presentation and you think, okay, well, we're done for a final draft. We're going to final draft this. So you want to make sure it is as accessible as possible. Well, not everyone has the ability to run things through a screen reader and listen to it, right? I don't even have that. I mean, if I sought out that ability in my center, I would have it because we have those things. But I'm sitting at my house right now and I'm working on a presentation when I finish with you guys. I'm not gonna be able to run it through one of those. So I need to make sure I have some other way to check it. And Microsoft has these things built in that will check it for you. So to run those checkers for Windows users, you click the file button where you would go to save your document. And you're going to go to under review and check issues. When you click that, you'll be able to click check accessibility. For Mac users, it's just under the review tab and check accessibility. Now I'm going to show you what this looks like. Now, once again, on purpose, I made sure that this presentation did not have all the alt text in it. It did not have the reading order and all of that. So I can show you what it looks like when you don't have it. Windows does have a screen reader built in. Doug, you can probably speak better on that. I have heard that it's not quite as good as some of the others. Yeah. So Doug can speak on that one. But I'm going to show you how to get to this, and I'm going to show you a little bit about it. So you go up to File. Under this info, you're going to go down to check issues and check accessibility. So when you do this, this box is going to pop up. And I'll tell you that Mac is pretty similar in what it looks like. You're going to see that it's telling me that I'm missing alt text. Well, I knew that. I did that on purpose to show you how it will catch things. So when you pull this up, if you click on this, it's going to take you directly to the image and it's going to highlight it for you. It's going to show you, hey, this is the image that's missing it. So then all you have to do is you don't have to exit out of anything. You just go through here, and I'm taking the long route around. Remember, I told you some people have shortcuts to this. And then I'm going to type in something. And then all I'm going to do is exit out of that. It's going to save it. And then it removes it from the list. So then I just move on to the next one. I keep on moving. Now I'm going to click all these. Now let's say once I fix all these, they're going to go away. Now let's look at this slide because this slide's deceiving. You would think that this slide has 3 images on it, but it doesn't. This slide technically has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It would be really easy when you are going back at the end, if you don't do it as you create the slide, to forget that you didn't lock these arrows down. Or maybe you didn't want to lock them down for a reason because you thought it would make sense in your alt texting to alt text this and then alt text this to say it's pointing to this. I would probably lock it down so there's less confusion, and I would probably just say, hey, there's an arrow pointing to the alt text. So this is one way that you can find these things. This is another way where you're going to find some of those weird images, like those floating lines that sometimes get stuck in a background that is just part of the template that you're using. So it can get really annoying at times, but you want to make sure that you, I saw people saying, I'm so glad I don't use PowerPoint. Yeah, I mean, you know what, right? It can seem really intimidating, and sometimes it can be time consuming. Even Doug, you do it all the time. I do it all the time. And there's still times that I sit and look at an image and I'm like, okay, what would the alt text make sense to be? And I have to run that through my brain a couple times, but it does get a lot easier. And it also, I think it helps me weed through some of the stuff I'm putting in my presentations to say, is this quality? Does this really support my message? And it kind of helps me bring a better, I think, presentation to the table. So you can see like all of these things, it just takes you down through here. Okay, so I showed you alt text. To make your presentation accessible, you must fix all of these, every one of these. Okay, it's also going to tell you missing slide titles. Now let's go to these. Now for this should be a slide title. I don't know why it does it like this, but it still makes me come back and say, okay, maybe I need to fix this because it's not showing me what I'm thinking I want it to look like. But for a slide like this, like it doesn't make sense for me to have a slide title because this is just an image slide. So if it makes sense to have one, I have it. If it doesn't, I don't. I will tell you that people will argue that not having it kind of doesn't help the structure that could be for accessibility for this presentation, but it's not a deal breaker. It's not like you're doing something bad by not having it. It's just kind of one of those things. So I do go back and check to make sure, like, okay, is the ones, like, for some reason, like, this is a title slide, this should be a title. So this is just means that somewhere along the line, maybe there's something weird going on with this slide in my formatting. So maybe I'll just like delete this and then create a new version of this slide right here to just try to fix it. But these aren't really deal breakers. These missing alt text are deal breakers. The next thing it's going to do, it's going to remind you closed captioning, and it's also going to tell you here at the bottom reading order. So it's going to say, hey, we are smart enough as a computer to acknowledge that you probably want the title read first, and then content, and then probably an image. Like the computer has some insight into that, but it's not always right. We sometimes want it done in a different way. Sometimes we create it in a different way. And so that's where this computer says, hey, normally we think you want it like this, but you didn't create it like this. Go double check it. And that's exactly what this kind of does, is it says, hey, just double check the reading order. And once again, you don't have to leave this slot, leave this box. You just open it up. I'm going to check it. I said, okay, well, see, like right here, it's telling me to check the reading order, but I'm checking it and it's in exactly the reading order I want it in. So I'm gonna say, okay, well, you're wrong, computer. I'm right. I'm gonna exit out of there. And that's the accessibility checker. Okay, let me get back down to my slide I was on here. So I always, even when I know for sure that I have gone through and I have done all the accessibility features, I always run that at the very end. And then I make sure I save it to make sure I don't lose that. Okay, so we talked about, before I hand it over to Doug to talk about Microsoft Word, which are things that I think everyone uses. A lot of people don't, not everyone uses PowerPoint, but everyone uses Word. And everyone uses PDFs. So you want to make sure that you take note of some of those steps. But a lot of us teach also. And earlier before I said that there's things that, especially as an academic institution, we're held accountable for accessibility. There are a lot of things that are best practice, but there are some that have laws mandating them. One of those are that you're in the same boat I'm in, being an institution, an academic institution, that if you are showing videos, they must have closed captioned. Now, remember, what was it, yesterday or day before yesterday? I showed you a video and I said, oh, I meant to turn on the closed captioning and I turned it on in the middle. Well, so it's not that big of a deal if you don't have it turned on immediately. But if someone raises their hand in the middle of the video or sends you a message or something that says, I need closed captioning, you must be able to toggle it on immediately like I did. So I can't close the video and say, oh, let me give you a script or let me go here. Like, you must be able to toggle it on. Normally, I turn it on from the get-go. I thought that I had hit it before, but I just do it just for good practice. But just know, if you have a video that you're showing, it must have closed captioning available on it to be turned on immediately if requested, if you don't already have it on. If you don't have it on, that's okay. Like I said, best practice is to try to, though. So what do you do? Because I use a lot of videos that aren't my videos. I train, I educate, I use YouTube videos, I use training videos from different sources that I have no control over. So if they don't have the closed captioning on it, then I can't just turn it on, right? It's not my video, so it's not like I can go and create it and then put it on there. So I try to reach, if I'm using those kinds of videos and I can't, and I'm like, I don't want to lose this video, but it doesn't have it, I try to reach out to the creator to say, hey, do you have a version that has this? Or if it's a YouTube video, I'll reach out to say, hey, can you toggle it on? And YouTube will automatically generate a script for you for it, and they'll do it. You have to check it because a lot of times it's not accurate. It will say things that it thinks that the person's saying, but they're definitely not saying, especially if you have an accent. So you want to make sure that you're doing those things. And unfortunately, there's been times when I have used videos that are really good videos that I really want to keep, but I've had to get rid of them because I tried to reach out to the person. They couldn't give me the caption version. And I just know that you just can't put those out there. So that's kind of I think that's like a Debbie Downer of the training, because sometimes you lose good content that way. And it's very unfortunate. But it's also an opportunity to educate others who have these videos of the importance of making things accessible. And I've actually been successful recently in getting national training programs to make their presentations and their videos accessible just by reaching out and saying, hey, we really need to do this. People can benefit from this. Let me help you do it. Or let me teach you how. Or do you know like a way to do it? So a lot of times I find that people just don't know how to do these things. They don't know about alt text. They don't know about all this. Most of the time they're really good about doing it. So another fun thing that I will leave you with before Doug is audio description. So audio description is not really, I think of this as like kind of a fun thing almost to know about, especially if you're working with individuals with disabilities, to be able to let them know that this is a resource that they have available to them. And what it is there's a lot of things that we watch. So like in movies and TV shows that happen that are essential parts of the video, the movie, but they're happening visually. So they're not part of the spoken script. So someone without vision, they're not going to be able to pick up on those parts. So what audio description does is it gives an audio feedback, an audio description explicitly of what's happening in that scene that's not being said. So that person has all the full context of what's happening in it. So Hulu, Netflix, Disney Plus, a lot of them are getting on board with this. Movie theaters have little hearing box things that you can toggle into that has this for a lot of movies. It's getting more popular. So I like to point it out because it's something for you to know, to like, if you're showing a video in class and you have someone who has a vision impairment, like knowing that there's an alternative for this that they can fully participate is important. Also, if you think people can benefit from it. I also want to point out that I think it's beneficial for people beyond vision impairments because I have ADHD and I have a pretty severe case at times. It does kind of get out of hand to where I can't enjoy media. Like I can't enjoy movies. I can't enjoy TV shows a lot of times because I can't pay full attention to what's happening visually and everything else is happening in my environment. So I miss out on a lot of things. So if I want to watch a movie, to really get the movie and to take in the full experience, I have to watch it probably 4 to 5 times to get everything that's happening. But I have found that if I'm watching a movie and I turn on the audio description, which my wife hates when I do, because she says it overloads her a little bit, I pick up a lot more on what's happening. I understand the movie, and then I don't have to watch it a million times to get it, and then I can actually enjoy it. So I think it's beneficial beyond individuals with hearing. Also, someone once commented on this. This video does not have closed captioning on it because it's providing audio description. So it's not really for vision. If the characters were speaking, it would have closed captioning, but what this video is showing you is explicitly what someone would be experiencing through an audio description. So they wouldn't be experiencing the closed captioning of the audio description, essentially. Oh, it went back.
From the creators of Tangled and Wreck-It Ralph, Disney. A carrot-nosed, coal-eyed snowman shuffles up to a purple flower peeping out of deep snow.
Ooh, hello.
He takes a deep sniff. His nose lands on a frozen pond. A reindeer looks up and pants like a dog. Seeing the reindeer slip on the ice, the snowman smiles and moves towards him, though actually he's running on the spot. The reindeer falls on his chin. The snowman uses his arm as a crutch. The reindeer paddles his front legs. Head over heels, the snowman crawls along the ice. The reindeer does the breaststroke. The snowman rolls his body, but flips onto his back. The reindeer's tongue sticks to the ice. The snowman hurls his head. Twig arm and reindeer lips tug at the carrot. The carrot flies off and lands in soft snow. The reindeer goes after it with snowman and his body parts hanging on his tail. The snowman puts himself back together again and glumly contemplates his noseless state. The reindeer jams the carrot back in place and pants like a proud puppy. The snowman pats him with his stick-thin arm, then goes to sneeze. He grabs his nose with both hands. His head shoots off. Frozen, coming this winter in 3D.
So what you can see there is there's so much happening in that couple minutes that if you couldn't visually take it in, you would miss all of that that's happening. Or if you couldn't pay attention to that visually because you don't like to sit still, you like to do other things while you're watching movies like me, you would still get that content. You would still get it from it without having to watch it 5 times. So this is where I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to let Doug take over and start sharing, and I will be in the chat answering your questions. Oh, someone asked how closed captioning works for a YouTube video. Oh, okay. So closed captioning, when you are the person who uploads the video into YouTube, you have an option of toggling closed captioning on for it. And it will auto-generate closed captioning for your video. And it will also like output like a script that you should check, because like I said, for like me, it thinks I say stuff that I definitely don't say because of my accent. So I want to make sure that it's matching up with what I'm saying. You can change it, you can edit it. But you have to be the person who uploaded that image or that video into YouTube to be the person to do that.
All good.
We are good to go, Doug.
Alrighty, we'll start on Microsoft Word. A lot of this stuff people might know already. It's always good to make sure we use it in practice. A lot of this stuff does get better with the practice the more you use it. One of the first things we do, we always encourage when you're making a Microsoft Word document, is to use the heading bar. It's up at top, and it really allows them screen readers, and also when you make your Word document into a PDF, that using the headings buttons really allows that structure to be built into that document, and allows AT users to navigate your document easier by being able to jump through the headings. Right here's it's again under the Home tab. Up here's the Headings tab, and there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Some of the newer versions only allow you to go 1 or 2. So again, 1 is your main title. 2 is used for your main sections, and then 3 is your subsections. So like we said, the subsections of 3 and 4, we don't get to use them a ton as you go through your sections, but if you are using the different numbers 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, it's always best practice not to skip any heading levels. And why do we think that is? Why wouldn't we want to skip heading levels from a screen reader point of view? Because as we know, a screen reader will say you are on a heading level, as we heard earlier. So this will say you are on a heading level 1, you are on a heading level 2. If it all of a sudden goes, you are on a heading level 4, the screen reader user is going to wonder what happened to heading level 3. They might think that they have missed something, they might have tabbed too much, and they skipped over a big chunk. So again, when you're using your heading levels, do not skip heading levels. Try to keep them in order of 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4 if you're going to. Don't try to skip them. So I'll show you on a Word document instead of having you guys go through it. We will see how this works. I'll share another document I have. This is one I'll use throughout the training. So if you see my heading level, here's my headings. We'll make this into a heading level 2. And as you saw, it changed it, the font and the color and all that. And again, we can fix that. So we'll make this also heading level 2. This paragraph spacing would be a heading level 3. So if you want, a lot of people don't like using heading levels because they think, well, it changes my color, it changes my font and all that. This is easily fixed. So if I see my heading level 2s, I want them to be like my other ones. That's heading level 3. So we'll go here to heading level 2. I right click on it and click modify. This will allow me to change my heading level 2s to always be how I want them to be. So we'll change the font to Times New Roman. I want them to be 14. So when I click OK, all my heading level 2s in this document should change. So, yep, they both changed. So now that stays on this document for as long as I want for my heading levels 2s. So if I come down, color use, click heading level 2, changed it to heading level 2. And again, and you can modify all this up here by right clicking, selecting modify and changing it. We'll change them to black, change to black. So again, one of the big things about headings is it allows you to build a table of contents. So if you have a longer document or you have a document that already you're working with, and you the old way of making table of contents is you would type the page number. And then as the document kept going, you'd have to go back and check all your page numbers and enter them manually. But if you have the heading levels already set up, you can go to your reference button here, and there's Microsoft Word has this table of contents. You can click on that and make sure I'm in the right spot. It'll allow you to put a table of contents right there, and this will automatically change your page numbers for you. And see, as all my headings are set up. So if somebody's using a screen reader that comes to the table of contents, they don't have to go through the entire document. They can just click on it and it'll take them to that part of the document. So that's kind of that navigating the document that we talked about earlier. So go back to our presentation. So for today, just make sure you can find them buttons. It's really beneficial to know where they are, and like I said, putting that structure to your document. So like we talked about earlier, using the actual built-in buttons to Microsoft Word adds that structure. Changing your font and color is all a visual structure that not all people get to partake in. It adds nothing to, say, a PDF file. It adds nothing to a screen reader usage. That's all visual. So like I said, we won't read, this is bold, it's red. It doesn't say that, it just says the word. It will say it's on a heading level, or it will say the heading level that you are on. Or it also say you're on a table of contents. So by adding that structure into your document, it allows the screen reader users to be more informed about the document they're reading. So again, if you're having a longer document, always try to put that table of contents in there under that reference section. Another thing we talk about, people used to do by hand, was creating data tables, making their own tables from tabbing or spacing from one side to the next. And what this does for a screen reader, when you use tab to get to the across the other side of the document, it adds silence to a screen reader. So people might think that the document might have ended. They might have to hit tab on their machine to get across, and it really breaks the document's flow up for them. So if you take one thing away, one of the things to take away today is try not to use that tab button to create space, to create room in your document. Again, data table is one of them ways to get from one side of your document to the other, and I'll show you how to do that. This is how to add alt text. Again, nice to add alt text to your table, just to kind of give a general. A screener will read the data table to people. It'll read all the cells, but if there's something you want to get across about that data table, go ahead and put that in the description. If you want to show maybe a change in numbers, or a change in the tuition over the past couple of years, just go ahead and add that in the description, so it easily jumps out to somebody, and they don't have to listen to every single cell of the data table to get that idea. So how you make a data table, you hit the insert button or the tab, and you can just drag your table to as big as you want on your document. Another cool feature of data tables is this repeat header row. This is up top under your layout tab, or you can also just right click and format your table under rows and have that. So what that allows it to do is it allows that top row of your data table to always be at the top of your page. So for a longer table, it'll allow it to stay up top. That way you don't have to scroll back up to see what row you're in. It'll always be there. For Mac users, the alt text on a table is where you right click anywhere on that image. It kind of works the exact same as it did for PowerPoint for Mac users. You can edit your alt text and then enter your description. So let's show you a data table on a new Word document. So here's my new Word document. Insert tab, data table. So we'll make it that big. So this will just be name, and these will be phone numbers. So this used to be a way people used to, again, make their own. You can make your own tables this way. People used to do it by hand. Again, you'd tab all the way across, you'd write somebody's name. People always say, well, I don't like the look of the lines. I like it just clean. That's why I did it with the tabs. Again, if you don't want the lines there, you can always, again, table properties, go to your cells, and we don't want nothing around them. So under border and shading, go to none, and then that gets rid of all your lines. So again, we still got across the page, but we did it with structure so that screen readers and other AT can read that without having to have this empty gap of space here with your document. So let's make sure this header row is locked in. Again, we can do it this way, table properties, row. It's unchecked right now, so we'll check it. But what that does is allows that to go to the next page if I were to have a long document with a lot of names and phone numbers. Having that checked will allow this name and phone number always to be at the top. Wouldn't it be better to do it by actually adding tabs to the document? You mean tabs by hitting the tab button, like if I were to type that and go across? Is that what you mean? Okay. Oh, the ruler. Yeah, that's another way you can do it also, by using the ruler. This is the way we've showed, but yeah, you can actually move it with the ruler across by adding the space and the different indents. Sure. Again, we're just trying to get people to use the built-in tools for Microsoft Word to add that structure to their documents.
And another thing I'm going to point out, sorry, Doug, but
Nope, good.
when you do that ruler, sometimes depending on the content and stuff, it may throw out, Doug's going to show you how to create a table of contents for your document. It may throw that off a little bit into whack too. I've seen that mess it up. So I've stopped using that ruler altogether.
So another thing that we sometimes include into our documents are hyperlinks. And sometimes them hyperlinks can get really long depending on what we're linking to. And again, a screen reader is going to have to read that entire hyperlink out, including all the backspaces, all the characters, all the periods, everything. It's going to read it, one by one, all the way through the hyperlink. So what we want to do is we want to edit that hyperlink down to a more manageable word or phrase or something that they know they're going to click on when that hyperlink. It's still going to have the same underline, it's still going to have the same color for anybody who's a visual user. Still going to know that's a hyperlink, but we'll just edit it. And when we do edit it, we want to make sure that we don't use any ambiguous text links, click here, email me, anything like that. So we want to edit that to something that's kind of like the alt text. We want to make sure it's descriptive enough that they know what they're clicking on, but nothing too long that it's just redundant, and we should have just left the hyperlink alone. So down here we have the hyperlink of www.wvats.cedwvu.org. That's hard to see because of the box in front of it. But a screen reader would have to read every single one of that, and it actually wouldn't recognize WVATS as a word, so it would read www.wvats.cedwvu.org, where we can edit that down to just have CED webpage. So how you do that is you right click on that hyperlink and you want to edit hyperlink. Then the bottom one is going to be your actual address. You want to leave that one alone. Yeah, you can also use Bitly. We've used that a couple of times. But again, it's kind of the same. Yeah, same point. Making manageable hyperlinks. And sometimes, like a screen reader, when they read a hyperlink with the characters, adding a descriptive hyperlink might be easier sometimes. So again, that one says WVATS webpage. So as long as you can find them two buttons, we'll go ahead and show you on the other document there. Two hyperlinks at the bottom, I believe. So the first link I'm showing on top is our loan library, and the second one is for the CED. So instead of having it read the old HTTPS, we're going to edit it just to say loan library. So I right clicked on it, hyperlink, edit hyperlink. I left the bottom one alone. The top one's what I wanted to display. So now they know that that hyperlink is for the loan library. Again, right click, we'll edit the hyperlink. This is for CED web page. So there's our two hyperlinks. They're a little more descriptive. They cut out all of that extra HTTP / that the screen reader would have to read that really doesn't tell them where they're going. and it just adds that descriptive hyperlink of what they're linking to. Another thing people sometimes use and build is their list and columns. I find it easier to type out what I'm trying to make into a column and then use the Microsoft Word tool to actually build the column afterwards. That way you can see how much space it takes up. But again, this is another thing to use the tools that are built in instead of trying to do it ourselves with spacing and hitting enter and tabs. So, and a list, a lot of us already use lists and bullets. Again, that adds structure to that document for that AT user. So again, continue using them when you have to make a list. Don't try to really do it yourself. Windows is good about picking that up now. All the most versions now will, any type you type 1 dot or 1 period and hit enter, that it's automatically going to put 2 period. So a lot of this stuff is getting picked up already from your document. But again, list and columns, use them when you can. Again, this is something we don't always use, but it's good to put into practice when you do get a chance. So the bullet is located on your home page. You can change them. The one thing I will say about bullets and lists, if you're going to start with one type, try to stick with that unless you're trying to convey other points. So it's okay to have a number 1 with bullet points and then 2, but don't mix up the different types of bullet points or numbers and bullet points. Because again, your screen reader is going to try to understand that and it will get a little confused. Columns is under the layout one. So what you would do is just drag your text that you want to make into the column, hit columns, it'll ask you 2 or 3, and then you click that. So let me show you that on our document. So here's my list. I'm going to click and drag, go to layout. We'll make this into 2 columns. And that's what, again, it's easier to type it out than try to have 2 columns already set up in your document to do that. So one more time, I'm going to highlight that, layout, columns 2, puts them nice and easy. Again, these, we don't get a chance to use these a ton, but when you do, it's always nice to put them into practice. So as PowerPoint had a built-in accessibility checker, Microsoft Word also has a built-in accessibility checker. It kind of does the same exact thing. It'll go through your document. It'll pull out 3 different types of things for you. It's under the File tab, Info, Check for Issues, then you get the Check for Accessibility. These are the 3 things that'll come up. Errors, warnings, and tips. Errors make your document impossible for people with disabilities to access. So that is your alt text, that is your added page breaks, added page skips. And again, these same things will carry over. If you turn the document into a PDF, a lot of these will carry over with them to make that PDF not accessible. A warning is more of your reading order, your color contrast, that stuff are your warnings, because they want you to check, because the computer can't recognize if that's how you want it or not. And tips are kind of just if they see something that you might be able to do. So it'll tell you to organize stuff a little better, or maybe if you have an empty cell in one of your tables, if that's wanted, then that's fine, but it's just going to have you to double check that. The big thing about Word documents is creating stuff into PDFs. We usually send them this way, different depending on the size or how we want people to not edit them. So when we do that, we want to make sure all the accessibility features we stuck into that document carry over to a PDF. There's nothing harder than trying to make a PDF accessible if you don't have the original document. There's ways to do it, but it's a lot harder. So anytime you add a structure into a Word document, it makes that into a PDF tag, and your Adobe readers will read that as a tag, and it kind of puts them all in their place. If things aren't structured properly, it'll literally just have one big block, and it considers that an image or a PDF. If there's no structure to it, your screen reader can't read that PDF. So when you want to convert from Word to PDF, you'll go to your File, Export, Create to PDF. Then the options will pop up, and you want to make sure that this box is checked. Document structure tags for accessibility. Just make sure that's checked, and then you can export that to a PDF. So I'll show you the boxes, what they look like now. So the top box here at the screen, we hit our file, it brought up this. We're going to hit export. Let's bring up you this little box here. Here's the button, create PDF. There's your options button. And here's what this says, document structure tags for accessibility. If that's checked, all your stuff's going to carry over to that PDF. And then you can just hit publish, and it'll publish that to wherever you have your saved documents. This is going to our shared files. I'll do that on that other document and show you a couple other things. So we'll show you, since we're here, I say use simple language, and I'll show you when I'm on the other document. Always try to check your grade level when you are sharing it. If you're making a Word document, know who the target audience is, and by checking that grade level on your Word document, it'll allow you to manipulate that language to get it down to the reading level of the audience you're trying to shoot for. So we'll pull over and show you them two things on that Word document. So over here, we're going to save this as a PDF. Export, create PDF. Options, let's make sure my thing's clicked. Here's document structure tags for accessibility. We're okay. So now I'd hit publish, and they would go ahead and publish that for me. So what I meant by readability statistic and using simple language, let me get through all this, ignore some of these. So once your whole document is checked, it comes up with a grade level of 8.2. So when we put stuff out to the public, we want them between usually a 7 and 9. Most newspapers release their stuff to the public at a grade level of 9. So this will give you an idea of what grade level you're putting your document out as. So if I wanted to get this down below an 8.2, I can actually go and check each paragraph separately to see the grade level of these. So if I go to this one, hit this little button, do you want to check the rest of the document? No, I do not, just that one. So that paragraph has a grade level of 11.4. So if I bring that down below my 8.2, that's going to give me a lower average. And what that checks for length of sentences, number of commas, number of sentences in the paragraph. That's what that stuff will check for. So this doesn't automatically come built in check to your document, to your Word. You have to turn the readability statistics on. And how you do that, you go down to options. You want to go to proofing. This box right here has to be checked for it to show you the readability statistics. So if that box is checked, you hit OK. And now when you do your proofreading, your proofing, it'll show you what grade level you're at. So we'll go back to the presentation. A couple other things to consider. Font size for a Word document, try to never to go lower than 12. Depending on your audience, you might want it to be bigger, depending on if I'm presenting to the document to, say, maybe a senior or an aging group, I might make that no smaller than 16. Again, know your audience, know the font size you need to present that at, but try never lower than a 12. Word documents, the same as PowerPoint. You want to make sure your color contrast, if you're using graphs or charts, make sure you have a nice contrast of color. Again, don't try to use color as the only way to convey, because that's a visual structure that screen readers will not pick up. Courtney talked about the watermarks. If you're using a lot of watermarks, either on a document or a PowerPoint. A screen reader will read them if they're not built in. And again, provide a table of contents for longer documents, just for not only for your people using screeners, but it's also beneficial to everybody, even yourself. So that's all I had, Courtney. Do you have anything else?
No, like I said, really the biggest thing is making your best effort and just using the things that the programs have for you. And like I was saying in the chat, I had that weird hiccup using that ruler and there's no rhyme or reason behind it. There's also times where I have had a PowerPoint and even a Word document that was older, and I think it was created under a different version of Microsoft. And then I would open it up. So like if you open up a really old PowerPoint and you go in to try to edit the alt text, sometimes that alt text won't even open. Like it won't be visible. And I don't understand, because I'm not an IT person. I don't understand all the rhyme or reason, but I know that one workaround is if I save it under a new version of Microsoft, I'm able to do it. So just learning kind of those tricks and figuring it out and understanding that technology is technology, I think that kind of helps ease this process a little bit of making things as accessible.
Oh, no, absolutely. I still get stuff that I've never seen before, and we've been making documents accessible for years now. Past 2 weeks, I had a document that would not allow it be checked by an accessibility checker. I've never had that happen, but again, technology, as long as people are trying to make their documents accessible, it's better than not.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you can't make something accessible, is there an alternative format that you can provide it in? So if you can't get the information in a PowerPoint, like, can you at least get it in a Word document that they can toggle through it or something like that? So just making sure that you're trying to meet that person's needs, or just the best way to do it. But I already told CJ this. So I sent her the certificate for Wednesday's training, person first language training. So she should have that. So if anybody requests the social work one, they can get that. Today, we decided to slightly modify how we did it. And we kind of, I thought that you guys would appreciate not having to be on here the full 3 hours, but instead 2. So we were able to get through the material in that time. The certificate that I have has 3 hours on it and I cannot modify it. I did send an email to my social work person and she will send it back to me hopefully by Monday at the latest. I think she's out today. So if you need social work CEUs for this training, just let CJ know and I'll make sure that she has that certificate hopefully by Monday, no later than probably Wednesday of next week. But it will be 2 hours instead of 3. And if you don't need the actual certificate, if you're just tracking your thing and you got our last certificate, the provider number's the same and you can just enter the 2 hours, but you'll get a certificate too. Other than that, just make sure, once again, you have my email. Also, I'm going to post 2 links in the chat, and CJ, I'm going to ask that you send these out again after the training for me like before. These are the post test and also the training evaluation. So you can follow through with that and just make sure, especially if you are doing CEUs, that you complete the pre and post test. Other than that, Doug, I don't have anything else. Do you, or does anyone have any questions?
No, I just thank everybody for learning a little more about making documents accessible.
Absolutely. All
I
right.
don't believe I did a pre-test. Where was I supposed to click that at?
So see, I believe CJ sent it out.
That came just prior to the session, Miss Michelle. So if you check your email, you should find it there.
Thank you.
Yeah, the biggest thing is that you take the post test, at least, if possible, especially if you need social work CEUs. Okay, well, thank you guys so very much. I'm really excited that I was able to show you guys this. Know that I am forever a resource for you on this. So if you get hung up on stuff, just hunt me down at the center, send me an email, and I'll try to help you with things, because I know that I've reached out to Doug, I've reached out to other people to say, hey, can you help me? Because I just can't figure this out. Like him with the accessibility checker, there's no rhyme or reason. it just happens. So having somebody else that can kind of double check it and help you, I think is very beneficial. So thank you guys so much and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you both. You too.
Thank you.